What up, everybody? Happy hump day. Welcome to the middle of the week. Hopefully your week is going great. Everything's going smooth. No issues on the job. Everything's great. You're making inroads into advancement. You're doing everything you need to do to be successful. That's what we're all about. Being successful in this trade, the electrical trade, getting rid of all the bullshit, all the fluff, all that kind of stuff. You know, no games, just professionalism. You're still one of those that are playing games on job sites and you expect to get the respect that you want, then you need to change your game up and carry yourself professional. And it doesn't matter whether somebody likes you or not. We're not in this to make friends. We're in this to learn the trade. And if friends come along the way, that's great. But other than that, you're here to learn the trade the best you can to the best of your ability and share it with other people. That's what we're all about here. So again, it's not about playing games and spitting spitballs and throwing wire nuts and all that bullshit on a job site. That ain't what we're about. Ain't what we're about. And I'm going to comment about it all the time because I didn't do it. And I don't expect followers to do that kind of crap either. So anyway, treat yourself professional, look professional, carry yourself all good. All right. You don't have to be politically correct, but again, at the end of the day, job sites are very important, making sure we stay very professional on job site. Anyway, thanks for joining me. It is hump day. It is Wednesday the 6th. Couple things we got going on this week. Let you know, give you update. We will be putting out a video later this week or early next week on generator, how to turn a bonded generator into an unbonded generator based on the manufacturer's instructions. So we'll be doing a short little video on that. It won't be very long. It's going to be not going to be highly produced. It's just going to be a quick little video that'll be available. I don't know what platforms that's going to be available on. I believe that may be only on Fast Tracks too, but I'll talk to Jeff, whatever. We're really getting away from, and we're a little slow, but we're getting away from the stuff we do on the YouTubes, except for the live streams, that type of thing. So anyway, that's what we got going on for today. That type of thing. We'll probably get that video produced. And what else do we got going on? That's it. So what are we talking about today on Coffee Hour? And of course, you can chime in if you want to chime in. Is we're going to be talking EMT. We're going to be looking at the hog because we want to see if the hog can tell us how EMT is made. Again, I'm not an EMT manufacturing expert. I am an expert of wiring cable. So I can tell you how wiring cable is made. But again, we'll go to the Trade Hog a little later, and we'll see what Trade Hog has to say. But EMT, electrical metallic tubing, is probably either the number one or number two most used wiring method out there. Again, there's a lot of jobs that use intermediate and rigid. Again, bit of a pain in the ass, threading it and all this kind of stuff. Unless the project requires it, maybe you're in a hazardous location, you have to add seal-offs, you have to all that. It makes sense. But for the most applications, EMT is going to be one of the most predominant used. It can be outside, it can be indoors. If it's outside, you want compression fittings. Indoors, set screw type fittings are typically fine unless your specification for your project state otherwise. But it's just easy to bend until you start getting up to a little over 1.25 inches. It takes a little more of an ass to bend it. But they do have e-benders, electric benders, things like that. Most all apprentices and journeymen should start out learning how to do EMT, half inch or half trade size, 3/4, even up to 1 trade size or 1 inch. Learn how to bend it, learn how to do offsets, learn how to do 45s, learn how to do 90s, all that basic stuff. Learn how to do back-to-back bends. It's just kind of, it's not brain surgery. The benders today have all the marks you need to know how to do back-to-backs and offsets, and it's just and most of them will give you an example on it of the take up. They have a sticker on it that says how many inches you lose in take up if you're doing an offset or you're doing a 4-bend or 3-bend saddle, all that kind of stuff, which I don't teach, by the way, because I don't get into teaching the wiring it in the box because anybody and his brother does that. I'm a code guy. I stick with the code stuff. That's why my channels, people say, well, how come you don't have 500,000 followers on YouTube? It's because I'm not interesting. I teach code. You use me and abuse me, and then you move on. Typically, people will use you to get their license or to learn something in the code or learn a change, and then they move on to something else. I'm not the kind of guy you'll watch every damn day, except for you folks that join me on Coffee Hour. But at the end of the day, I am not engaging. I don't have the bouncing boobies. I don't have all that stuff that garners a bunch of people watching. Because then if you get a bunch of people watching, then you turn around and you sell out and you start selling products like other people's products and things like that. And I ain't doing that. I ain't selling other people's products. Now, I'll give something away like the wire waffle because it solves a code need. But I will never, ever do a show where somebody just sends me something and I stump it, that type of thing, unless it has some code relevance. So somebody could send me a meter. I'm not doing a video on a meter. Everybody knows what meters do, how you work it, but just because somebody sends me shit. So again, if you haven't figured out by now, whatever channel you're watching, I am not your normal educator. 1, I'm not politically correct. 2, I don't really care what people think of me. 3, I'm only here to teach you the code. And 4, don't send me your shit so that I can promote it for you for free, as I don't do that either. Now, the reason I promote the wire waffle, 1, is I had communications with the gentleman named Hunter, and I gave him some advice on this. And he asked me that I would check it out, and I do, and it meets a code need. A code need. So if you have something that meets a code need, right, then I am more than happy to promote it if it meets a code need. This meets a code need, 312.5C, so I think it's a great product. And it's also why we give away some on the wheel. Is this going to solve every issue you've got of bringing in cables into the one TA? No, it's not. Right? Because if you use this on an exterior panel and you have the wall and you have that little gap between the connector and the wall because of those 1 1/4 inch standoffs, then it's still outside the building. So your non-metallic sheath cable would still be outside of the building. So doesn't solve every issue. I've given them advice on how to take this connector and extend it and it still be considered a connector and not a raceway and maybe get around some of those rules. But whether they listen or not, it's irrelevant. I don't really care. But anyway, there you go. Wire waffle. Okay, boom. All right. So with that said, we'll talk EMT. But like always, I live vicariously through you folks that join us every day and join us for the show and ask your questions. Sometimes I get to all the questions. Sometimes I don't get to all the questions. You know what to do if I don't get to all your questions. And I encourage you to have questions. But if I don't get to your question or I can't answer it live on the stream, do me a favor. You can always go to paulabernathy.com. Okay. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything. I don't know why people don't do it more, even though I get thousands of messages. paulabernathy.com was a sponsorship. Wix pays for it. It doesn't cost a dime. And you get to go to paulabernathy.com and post your question. Simple. First name, last name, email address, and then ask your question. But you can also use it to send messages as well. That way, it's fine. You can be anonymous if you want. If you're like scared for somebody to know who your name is. I got a lot of electricians out there who are scared to share their contact information because they will say, well, I don't want Paul to know who I am. Dude, wake up, grow up. Life is short. Who gives a shit? You know, I get people that are very well-known educators call me all the time and ask me code questions. It doesn't matter. Okay. We're all in the same trade together. We're all in the same boat, trying to keep it afloat. You know what I'm saying? All right, let's go look at some of our folks that are visiting us this morning, do some shout outs. What's up, Paul? Glad to have you here down in Houston, our resident printer sign guy. There you go, Paul. Glad to have you here. Seattle, I'll just say that for now on. I just call it Seattle. Good morning. Glad to have you here. Let's see. JPB, good morning. Glad to have you here, my friend, down in Alabama. I bet it's muggy down in Alabama. It's muggy here in Virginia. What's up, Jonathan? Good morning. Shout out to you. Marlon, glad to have you here, Marlon. Appreciate you. Shouting out to all the nerds. Oh, let's see here. What do we got here? We've got Adam. Good morning, Adam. Shouting out to all the code nerds. Glad to have you here. Rob's in the house. Glad to have you here, Rob. Welcome, as always, to the show. Cray Cray's in the house from Nashville, Tennessee, Music City. Got some Zach Top going on up there. I love Zach Top. Okay, I like bluegrass music, and Zach Top got started in bluegrass. But I tell you what, him and Billy Strings and Marcus King and all those, dude, they've just got some crazy skills. I'm trying to learn to play the guitar. I got an aero guitar. I got a regular guitar, but I got an aero guitar with it's electric type of synthetic strings and all to save the fingers, you know, because I got baby hands now, as you all will say. I don't work in the field. So Paulie got baby hands. Paul got little baby hands. So anyway, I work it and trying to learn all the chords I can so that I can transfer them over to the regular guitar. Anyway, so it's kind of it's a little hobby of mine. I suck at it, by the way. So anyway, what's up? New place. Good morning. Glad to have you here. I should have music playing in the background when I do these morning things. That should I add to the show. I should have a little background serenade when I do this or something. What's up, Michael? Glad to have you here, my friend. Let's see here. Travis Spears. Good morning, Travis. Glad to have you here. Travis is putting in the win. #win to get it on a spin. Good news about that. Jess says that he got all the winners information that we have. So everything's getting scheduled to go out. So that's great. Appreciate that. Jeff does a lot behind the scenes. Appreciate it. What's up, Rob? Melting Toast over on right there, over on the tube. You can watch over on Fast Track's tube as well. So thanks for watching over there. Alex, good morning. Glad to have you here. CMECP in the house, Mr. Yingling. Okay. Out in BWI Airport, right up the road. Working from the airport. Man, they must have a massive expansion going on in BWI or something up there. What's up, Manny? Glad to have you here, Manny. Welcome. Let's see, what else do we got here? There you go. Manny's excited. 358. Let's go. EMT. Let's see. Red Dog is in the house.
Woo, 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 woo. Big dog.
Dog. What's up, Adrian? Good morning, Adrian. Glad to have you here at the show. David Bueno up in New York City. Welcome. What's up? Poppy's showing you how to do it. Poppy's showing #win. God bless America there. Poppy 420. Welcome. Glad to have you here. Angel. Good morning, Angel. Glad to have you here watching over on YouTube. I am doing well, my friend. I cannot complain. We got another CMECP in the house. Todd down in Florida as well. Welcome, Mr. Sheppers. Let's see here. What do we got? You said you met the creator of the waffle. Is that Hunter? Yeah. Took a need and decided to turn that need into something that fills a problem. I hate this shaking. By the way, we have new camera mounts coming that are going to isolate cameras because, again, we've got Vince Delacroix coming, who's also going to be joining us over in the podcast area coming up in October, the week of Halloween. Vince Delacroix will be here in the studio. We'll be doing some videos. Hopefully get him on some of the live shows. I'd love to get him on a live show. I think he will be. I think he will be on a coffee hour, that type of thing. Love to have him on a coffee hour. Y'all want more than just me to look at, so at least he'll be in the studio. What's up, Angel? Good morning. I am doing well. I can't complain. Paul, quit being an introvert, said nobody ever. Dude, I speak my mind. People like it or not. I don't care whether people subscribe or don't subscribe. I really don't. I do this for me and what people take away from these lessons in our training. Again, I am very much, and I'm the only educator out there who will not pander to people for selling courses. If you want my course, you want to learn the NEC, that's great. If you want somebody to coddle you and coddle your emotions and whatnot, I ain't the guy. Okay. I'm here to teach code. That's it. What you see here is what you get offward. I'll help anybody, but again, what you see is what you get. So, again, I'm not here to be fake to anybody. What's up, Cray Cray? Good morning. Edgar, welcome. Glad to have you here this morning. We got Derek. Derek from Chicago up in the Windy City. I'm going to actually be in Chicago in September for the NECA show. If you're there, stop by. And if you go to the NECA show, everybody should go to the NECA show if you get a chance and you're in the area. You know, a lot of those influencers will be there because I guess they've been doing this for a couple years and get a bunch of followers and think that they're somebody. Reality is whatever, but they'll be there and you can meet many of those. Okay. And then if you want to stop by and meet an electrician, that's me. Okay. Do I do it in the field every day anymore? Nope. I work smarter, not harder now. I don't need to cut these hands up in the field. I put my time in and don't care to do it anymore. Done. Well, you're not a real electrician unless you're working in the field until you're 75 years old. Piss off. Piss off. Okay. How many electrons didn't change the last time I checked? Okay. Let's see here. What's up, Cray Cray? He's pretty good also. I know you like Westerners, like Tombstone. Check out Old Henry. We'll do it. I do like the old Western. I loved the Tombstone movies and Val Kilmer and all those. It's just, I love those old Westerns. Wouldn't want to live in that time. I'm just saying, but I love it. What's up, Frank? You know, somebody asked me one time, it's kind of funny. And let me know who you are, where you're from in the comments. And topic of the day is EMT. What's your thoughts? But I will tell you, somebody asked me one time, if I could go back in time, where would I go? Is that an interesting question? Have you ever asked yourself that? Is if you could go back in time, where would you go? At what point in time would you want to go back? Now, I have a unique one. For me, I am big about the Revolutionary War. I'm big about all that type of stuff. I just love it. I love watching Civil War stuff. Again, you know, I don't get lost in the hype. I just love that different stuff and the stories. And the more accurate the story, the better. I mean, I don't like those fictitious stories about well, they don't know, but this is what we think. It's kind of like those people on the alien channels or whatever. They show that shit about aliens. I'm like, dude, I ain't never seen an alien. I ain't never been abducted. I never been probed by an alien. I'm just saying, not that I know of. but at least I haven't felt the after effects of it, and I'm not bow-legged. I don't know. Anyway, I don't know about any of that stuff. Some of the stuff are weird, but I don't buy into all that stuff until I see it. That type of thing, But what I do know is I like the documentaries that are based on fact. And if I could go back in time, and I had one place to pick that I could go back in time, I would like to be in the room at the signing of the Declaration of Independence with all of those minds in there, just to see how the dynamics play out. You know how we portray people in history and in movies and documentaries. Are they really that way? Is George Washington really that way? Is all those times? That's where I'd like to be. People say you like to hang out with Tesla. No, he's an electrical guy. What am I going to take away from one day with him that's going to be beneficial to me? Because he wasn't an electrician. Great mind. I love it. But if I had to pick, and everybody's got their own, if I had to pick my one time in history, I would like to be in the room just to hear the conversations, spend the day walking around that room, listening to all of those minds, Benjamin Franklin, all those in that gathering. One time, that would be me. I just want to know: are they like they portrayed? What do they sound like? What are their thought processes? You know what I'm saying? That's my, if I had one place in time to go back to. Okay, that type of thing. All right. Anyway, enough of that. So let's talk about today's topic. First, let's just go on to the NEC real quick before we get anything too deep anywhere else. We're here at the NEC. So we're going to be talking about Article 358 today, electrical metallic tubing. The word tubing. I can tell you right now, if I had $1 for everybody, okay, if I had $1 for everybody that says EMT conduit or that it's a conduit, then I'd be a rich man, okay? It's a tubing. It is made. It is not a conduit. So you see RMC, rigid metal conduit. Okay. Battle. We'd love to go back to Japan surrenders in their own harbor. There you go. Everybody's got that, that one point in time where they'd like to go back to. If you ever never really given it a thought, I do. I would just love to be in that room with all those founding fathers. It just would be amazing. That's my one wish. Anyway, so where was I? Well, okay, so a lot of people call EMT a conduit. It's not a conduit. It's a tubing. Right? So that's why it's called EMT. Different. Now, is EMT a raceway? Right? Yes, it is a raceway. It is a wiring method. Is RMC, rigid metal conduit, a raceway? Yes. It is a raceway, different type of raceway. IMC, intermediate metal conduit, raceway, conduit. EMT, tubing. PVC, conduit. Okay. Significance of that really is just remembering that the tubing. Now, when it comes to the tubing, we have some rules that we have to follow in EMT. We're not going to go over those. We're going to go over those just briefly in order to create this coffee hour that can be used later over on Fast Track's Tube that talks about EMT. But we'll kind of go over that real quickly, and then we'll look at some graphics and talk about some securing and supporting and all this kind of stuff. But if you have any questions about EMT or anything you want to ask Trade Hog, we'll ask Trade Hog. And I'm going to ask Trade Hog to describe or to how is EMT made and see what Trade Hog has to say. Okay. Again, I'm not an expert. I've never been to an EMT manufacturing facility. Okay. That type of thing. So anyway, let's go over here. All right. So first of all, as with any wiring method in a code, you want to make sure you always read the scope, the .1. What are we talking about? Well, this article covers the use, installation, and construction. So it's broken down into multiple parts, okay? For electrical metallic tubing, EMT, and associated fittings. Okay, so this article, 358, not only covers the EMT, but it also covers the fittings that will be utilized with electrical metallic tubing. Okay. All right. First thing you'll see here is that EMT.6 is a listed product. Okay. What's up? What's up, PD? Glad to have you here. So EMT has to be listed, so the manufacturers will list it. It meets its specific UL standard, UL ANSI standard, its production standards, its wall thicknesses, its standardized diameters, all these type of stuff that it has to meet. So EMT, the factory elbows that you can buy that are pre-made, okay, and associated fittings shall be listed. Okay, so anything that you buy that's going to be used with EMT, whether it's the fitting connectors, elbows, 45s, offsets, all that kind of good stuff that you're going to buy for use with EMT, all of it's going to be listed. Okay, so there's not an issue of can I use something that's unlisted with the product? Now, that's not going to work because it all has to be listed. Now, another important thing is what if I'm transferring or transitioning, I probably should say better, transitioning between EMT, let's say, and MC. Then again, you have to have a fitting that is listed for use with the EMT, but simultaneously it's going to be evaluated and listed for use with the MC as a transition fitting. Okay. So gone are the days where you can try to transition between using, and don't tell me if you've done this or not, EMT to a connector to a thread-on coupling from, let's say, rigid, and then transition down to a connector for MC, and then put MC in it with a clamp. And you go, okay, that Frankenstein kind of transition is not actually compliant. Now, whether you do it and an inspector says something about it, it's, that's neither here nor there. But that type of transition between an EMT to an MC needs to be done with a transition fitting that is listed for both use with EMT and with MC. Now, that pretty much goes the same for any transition that you're going to be going from an EMT to another type of wiring method. Okay, if they make it that you can transition, then you're going to need to make sure that whatever you use to make that transition is also a listed product as well, because it has to be listed to go with the product that's connecting onto. So whatever that thing is, it's got to be listed for EMT, but it also is evaluated and listed for use in whatever else it's going onto. You know what I'm saying? What's up, Sven? I am doing good. Thanks for joining us. All right. So there you go. Now, that is it for general. Pretty quick and down and dirty. Oh, I should also say, for those that are preparing for the electrical exam, as I always do, when you see a question on the exam that seems like it's very specific to EMT, right? That it's talking about securement, it's talking about supporting, right? It's talking about anything that just feels that it's specifically germane to the EMT itself, not a general wiring under 300, right? But it's very specific. Then 358 is not a big article. So I recommend don't waste your time going to the index. Okay. I recommend that you do bold scanning. And your bold scanning on a very short article, as you get used to that, is going to be much better for you as far as being able to maneuver than always running to the index. Now, I love the index. Don't get me wrong. But at the end of the day, in something like this, if you feel the question is very specific to EMT, securing, supporting, and which, remember, dot 30, remember we talked about that yesterday. If you feel like it's very specific, use is permitted, use is not permitted. Can I do this with EMT? Can I not? Dot 10, use is permitted. Dot 12, use is not permitted, which is pretty much used in the wiring method area, the dot 10 and dot 12s for cables and raceways. Then you pretty much, all you do is read the question, or if it's in the field situation, look at it and go, what am I trying to do here? And is it okay for EMT to be used here? That's where you start. Then basically it's just much easier just to go to 358 than it is to try to dip through the index for this. Okay. That's just kind of thought process. If you identify, you get used to identifying the question. Okay. Anyway. All right. So that's up with that. So now we're at the part 2 part. Now, use is permitted. Where can you use EMT? All right. Exposed and concealed. Concealed in walls. Okay. Exposed on the surface of walls. Perfectly fine. But it says the use of EMT shall be permitted for both exposed and concealed work for the following. Okay. So in concrete, all right, this is where people lose their mind. Okay. in concrete, in direct contact with the earth, in direct burial applications with fittings identified for direct burial. So they're going to have DB marked on it. Okay. That's the first part. So this is where people, again, will freaking lose their mind. It says clearly in concrete, in direct contact with the earth, in direct burial applications with fittings identified for direct burial. Now, you'll notice that it has right here this or. Y'all remember what I talk about all the time, and you're going to get better at the code when you, what's up, Frank? Good morning. What's up, Stephen? Good morning. What's up, Dwayne? Good morning. Jason, I didn't see you in here. Good morning. Francis, good morning. Glad to have you in here. You're going to have to get really used to reading the code, and I teach dissecting. I've been teaching it for decades. You got to read it, and you got to understand how it breaks up. And slowly the code is changing into number format and trying to break things up to sound a little better. And that is the effort. What's up, David? That is the effort moving forward. Also in the 2029, it's going to try to just move things around logically so that it flows a little better. Obviously, more and more people will submit things to break things up so that you don't have one big long run-on sentence in the code, which can be very confusing to follow. It's getting better. Just have to be patient. Remember, you're the one that makes change to the NEC. If there's something you don't agree with or something you don't like, don't wait for the code panel to do it, because we're not going to do it. Code panel's not going to go hunting through here and say, well, you know what? My mission today is to make this article much better. We don't have the time for that. So if there's something that you can justify, you can quantify, you can prove that you think will make the code better, then submit it on a public input, and it'll come to us at the code panel, and we will look at it. And if it has merit, we'll change it. I mean, we have no vested interest, despite what people want to say. I don't care. I'm not on this code panel. But if the code panel looks at it and goes, well, that makes sense, that reads better, right? Then they'll change it to make it read better. And so, again, you're the driver of change. If you sit back and just bitch and complain, and then nothing will ever change, okay? Like I say, squeaky wheel gets the grease. So that type of thing. All right, what's up, Santana? Good morning. Glad to have you here. All right, so that's it. Important of the or. Or means you do this, or if this condition is in place, you do this. Okay, so what does it say? All right, so and then it says, or in areas subject to severe corrosive influences were installed in accordance with 310.10, 358.10b, and this is corrosive environments, right? All right, so can I install it in concrete EMT? Absolutely. Again, not aluminum EMT. You'll see some applications for that here shortly. But so steel, the normal ferrous, normal EMT, absolutely I can. It's already evaluated from the manufacturer. It already comes with a galvanized, that's a sacrificial coating. It already comes with this protection on it. However, if there is severe corrosive influences, like maybe in an area where there's being used and there's a lot of chemicals that could spill in the ground, or maybe the local jurisdiction knows that the area that you're installing it is a very high acidic nature, like there's some places like that out in Arizona, well, then they would say that it's severe corrosive influence condition, and they'll make you do a little something, okay? A little something extra, all right? That type of scenario, okay? Let's see. Boggy Creek, somebody new, we're not sure. It's got some advice for us. Let's see if I can say yes or no. They aren't like PSI. They don't write the NEC test and administer the test about the money-making scheme. Whatever, you know what? And I'm sure that you wear a tinfoil, people wear a tinfoil hat also, okay? You clearly don't understand what PSI is. PSI just works with a group of people to write exam questions for licensure. Totally different thing. Code making panels, totally different thing. So I tell people all the time out there, people, just, okay, and I'm probably not reading all you're saying, Boggy, but let me explain to people. If you are people out there that think that the code making panel doesn't do anything but get together to make money for manufacturers, listen to me quickly. You are full of shit. And you need to go off on somebody else's channel. So if somebody in the background says that all the code making panel does is produce code requirements to help manufacturers get more money, you are full of shit. Let me just say it now, because I like to be transparent, right? That is not how it works. Now, do you have influencers that serve on code panels that have dubious interest? Absolutely, you do. Now, if they're new to the code panel, they have probably zero influence because nobody knows them, they're not respected. But from time to time, you'll get people that sit on code panels that have been there for a while, that have an influence. And so you'll have people around a code panel that not everybody on a code panel is an expert in certain areas. For example, you might have a code panel that has that covers 4, 5, 6 different articles. And you may have some code panel. You can never find somebody on a code panel that is 100% an expert on all of the topics. You're not. It's very hard. I'm probably one of the few that may be close to that. Ryan Jackson, close to that. There's some others, but a lot of the manufacturers that sit on there only know their product and their scope. That's why they're on the panel. But they get a vote on other things that they don't know a lot about. So what happens is you get an influencer who's on a code panel who knows a lot about a topic and others don't know at the code panel. And so they grandstand and they convince others, right? And they vote, right? They convince others and they vote, right? So that type of thing. Eric, if you don't like my tirades, leave now. Eric, I do the way I do, and I don't do anything because anybody tells me how to do something. You're free to go. You're going to learn that pretty quickly. You're going to learn that pretty quickly. Sorry about that. We had another issue going on here. So again, I don't cater to anybody. So again, my show's not for everybody. So I'm in that kind of mood. So I'll do what I want. So anyway, so I'm just giving a lesson on how the code panel does. This isn't lesson hour and coffee hour. We don't just do. I do anything on coffee hour. We talk about all types of topics. Unless somebody's on there that influences others, then they can influence a code panel. And yes, there are distractors there that maybe have interest in manufacturers. But as far as a whole, it's too there's too many different references on there for it to be anything that's specific. So again, hopefully that explains that. All right. So back to the EMT. All right. So next it says you can use EMT in dry, damp, or wet locations in any hazardous classified locations as permitted by other articles in the code. So if anything in 500, 501, 502, 503, all those type of things, if they make reference to the use of EMT, then you're okay. That's fine. And then number 4, it says for manufactured wiring systems as permitted in 604.100A2. So if you had some of those pre-manufactured wired systems are okay to use EMT in their design, perfectly fine as well. Now, B talks about corrosive environments. It says number 1, it says, and now notice it doesn't say severe corrosive environments right now. It just says corrosive environments. It says galvanized, hold on here. I'm getting inundated today. Galvanized steel, stainless steel EMT, elbows and fittings shall be permitted to be installed in concrete. See, this says galvanized steel. Most of the EMT you already buy is already fine to go in concrete. In direct burial with the earth or in areas or in areas subject to severe corrosive influences were protected by corrosion protection. Okay. So again, you notice it goes right here and it says or. It says or in areas subject to corrosive influences were protected by a corrosive protection and approved as suitable for the condition. So that's another big important aspect of here is when you read this and you see the or. So galvanized EMT, it's fine. That's what the galvanization is for. It's only when you get into the corrosive, severely corrosive condition that you have to do something extra, okay? And then again, method you're using has to be approved, okay? By what? By the AHJ, okay? All right, so one of the other things that we'll look at, hold on, is down here, and it's talking about supplementary protection of aluminum EMT, because they do make aluminum EMT. So if you want to use aluminum EMT, here's what we were talking about. It says aluminum EMT shall be provided with an approved supplementary corrosion protection. Maybe it's a wrap around it, some kind of encasement and something that covers it. Okay, you can buy these. They go on it. We're encased in concrete or in direct burial with earth. So it's not prohibiting the use of aluminum EMT. It's just saying if you want to use, and it's becoming big, a lot of people are using aluminum EMT. I'm seeing a lot of videos with it. I think it's this American Conduit and Tube, I think, do it, who make the aluminum and EMT, and it's perfectly fine. It's just that if you're going to use it, you got to do a little something extra. And it kind of makes it the point, why would I do all that? You know what I'm saying? I'm just going to use a regular old steel or galvanized type of EMT to do that. But also a reference, if you go look at Steel Tubing Institute, I don't know if you Google it, Steel Tube Institute, STI, you will see that they have documentation and everything right on there about the use of galvanized EMT to find in the ground, as long as you use proper fittings for the environment, all those type of things. Perfectly okay to do so. It's galvanized. That is the initial corrosive protection on it. Okay. But if it's designated as severe corrosive condition, then your AHJ are going to want something a little extra because of the severe corrosive nature. What's the difference? Well, severe, I think, is where they have a value and they've designated it by the jurisdiction or the locality that a certain location is severe. Or if it's due to acidic amount of acid or acidic or whatever in the soil, that type of thing. You would do it. Okay. But again, I get a lot of people that say you can't put EMT in the ground. Absolutely, you can. Whether you want to or not, and whether you feel like it's a good practice or your own personal feelings about it, well, that's up to you. I mean, to each his own. But with a galvanized, I have no problem putting it in the ground as long as I use proper fitting. And again, you're not going to use set screw fittings for that. Y'all know that, right? Let's see here. Adam says, well, so when you use EMT, would you use a ground or use it or just use the pipe as a ground? Personally, are you asking me personally? 251.18 allows me to use EMT as an equipment ground. So personally, I mean, y'all know that question. I'm a wiring cable guy. So I'm going to pull a wire in it, right? You get me? But at the end of the day, could I use the EMT in it? Whether even if it's stuck in the ground, absolutely I can. It's perfectly acceptable to use it. Okay. All right. Let's go real quickly and get back over on here. Cinder fill, again, if you're going to install it in a cinder fill application, it says galvanized steel or stainless steel shall be permitted to be installed in cinder concrete or cinder fill where subject to permanent moisture when protected on all sides by a layer of non-cinder concrete at least 2 inches thick, or when the tubing is installed at least 18 inches under the fill. So again, I can use galvanized steel or stainless steel. I can put it in a cinder fill concrete or cinder fill, but I have to make sure that's protected on all sides with a non-cinder concrete. Okay, or when I'm installing it at least 18 inches under the fill. Okay, so I have allowances there. Wet locations, all supports, bolts, straps, screws, and so forth shall be corrosion-resistant material or protected against corrosion by corrosive-resistant material. Okay, whether it's a coating, something you put over it, a cap that's designed to cover it, whatever, if you're going to put it in wet locations. So most of the people are going to use the straps. Now, here's where most people fail. They'll use a galvanized strap. Obviously, it's got to be listed for use with EMT. 1-hole strap, 2-hole straps, whatever. But the screw itself is where they usually fall short, right? They'll use the strap that's listed for it, but then they'll use a screw that's not rated for the environment. And after a while, it rusts out or something happens. And heaven forbid, people use sheetrock screws. Ask me how I know, because I've seen it. And it is obviously not rated for the environment, not rated for that application. We don't rate screws, by the way, but we still know that whether or not we're getting a screw or not, that is rated for the wet location. Okay, corrosion resistant type of thing. All right, next, physical damage. Steel and stainless steel EMT shall be permitted to be installed where subject to physical damage. Now, that just was added, I think, in 2020. Before that, it wasn't rated for use where subject to physical damage. Now, notice it doesn't say we're subject to severe physical damage. No, we don't have definitions of physical damage and severe physical damage in the NEC. We don't. Okay. You're going to have to work with your AHJ. Okay. So I think severe would be, for example, if you're working in an area where there's a lot of loaders and things like that, then you could argue that that could be a severe. But most of the time, we're going to get covered under physical damage, and EMT is perfectly fine for protection against physical damage. Just like yesterday, we talked about Schedule 80 PVC is okay for physical damage. Here, EMT is also okay for physical damage. All right, so uses, when can you not use EMT? All right, well, EMT shall not, so it's not an option, right? This is a mandatory rule here. EMT shall not be used under following conditions. We're subject to severe physical damage, okay? So again, AHJ's got to make that call. Somebody's got to make that call, right? Also, EMT is not to be used for the support of luminaire or other equipment except conduit bodies no larger than the largest trade size of the tubing. Okay, so what's the deal with that? Okay, let me get back to me real quick. So you're not going to support the luminaires or even other equipment except for conduit bodies. You can support conduit bodies that are freely. You know, you have an EMT, you have a conduit body, and you have an EMT going out. Okay, so it's basically supporting the EMT. The conduit body. The EMT supporting the conduit body. It says you can't use this EMT for support of luminaires or other equipment except conduit bodies no larger than the largest trade size of the tubing. So if it's a conduit body and its designed entry is trade size 3/4, then the tubing would be 3/4, that type of thing, right? And so that type of LB would work fine in it. Could you drop it down to reduce the size down to a half? I don't know why you would. It's going to have a problem with the fill, but I mean, you could. You just can't be exceeding that. So I can't put an LB on it, right? And have something change and put a bigger LB and then have my raceway change over in order to be able to fit into a larger LB, because it has to be based on the size of the raceways that's flying it. Okay, then it couldn't be larger than that. Okay, but it could support that LB, okay, or conduit body, LR, LL, whatever. It just can't support luminaires in itself, and it cannot support conduit bodies that are going to be larger entry than what the size of the raceway that's going in. Okay, important to do that. All right, next, dissimilar metals. Okay, so where practicable, so where it all can be done, okay, without being overly intrusive, it says dissimilar metals in contact anywhere in the system shall be avoided to eliminate the possibility of galvanic action. Stainless steel and aluminum fittings and enclosures, okay, remember this part right here. Stainless steel and aluminum fittings and enclosures shall be permitted to be used with galvanized steel EMT and galvanized steel fittings and enclosures, okay? And enclosures shall be permitted to be used with aluminum EMT were not subject to severe corrosive influences. Okay, so again, it's telling you that stainless steel, as well as aluminum fittings and stainless steel fittings and their associated enclosures, are permitted to be used with galvanized EMT. It's okay, all right? They don't cause a problem, okay? And I can use galvanized steel fittings and enclosures shall be permitted, okay? So galvanized steel fittings and enclosures shall be permitted to be used with aluminum EMT, again, as long as the location where you're doing all this is not subject to severe corrosive influences. Right? So it's important. Now, again, understanding that we have corrosive environments, which is galvanized, is already protected against. And then, of course, somebody that has to designate something as a severe corrosive influence. Okay? Again, it could be wherever the installation's going, could be a chemical plant, could be a processing plant, could be where they store chemicals. Okay? Somebody's got to make that, okay, that type of thing. I would say cinder fill is considered corrosive. Yeah. So that's why it has allowances when you put EMT in it, for example, then it's going to have a non-cinder encasement around it, that type of thing, or be below it, that type of thing. That's cinder fill, okay? All right, so again, let's get back to, now it says stainless steel EMT shall only be used with the following. So if you have stainless steel EMT, okay, now remember right here, this was stainless steel and aluminum fittings and enclosures, okay? That's all this was talking about. This was not talking about the stainless steel EMT. So important to read this and pause and realize what we're talking about. This is using stainless steel and aluminum fittings and enclosures with stainless steel EMT, okay? And then it talks about galvanized steel fittings and enclosures are okay to be used with aluminum EMT as long as it's not in a severe corrosive environment. Now we're specifically talking about stainless steel EMT. And it says it can only be used with, this is the EMT itself, which is expensive stuff. So it would be, can only use stainless steel EMT with stainless steel fittings, stainless steel boxes and enclosures. You can use stainless steel EMT, shall only be used with steel, whether it's galvanized, painted, powdered, or PVC coated, and so forth, boxes and enclosures when, again, they are not subject to severe corrosive environments. So you're getting an allowance down here, okay, to use stainless steel EMT with other types of boxes and enclosures, as long as the location is not considered severe corrosive, has severe corrosive influences. Only you're going to know that based on the area that you're installing it. Anywhere general, you wouldn't. But I'm going to give you a little bit of a thought process. Whoever the engineer is designing this, if they're already specifying stainless steel EMT, then look real closely at the area where this is being done, because they may be doing it for some other reason. It may be because it is dealing with a severe corrosive environment and something like that, and they want something a little higher level. Then again, be careful and make sure you read all the details, especially if an engineer is submitted. If I'm seeing stainless steel on there and I'm looking at it and I'm going, all right, now I have to determine, okay, is this a severe corrosive environment? Does it have severe corrosive influences there? That'd be different. Another example would be in a pool room. Somebody would argue that if it's an area where they store the chemicals, then that is more than a corrosive environment. Depending on the proximity and where it's at, they may dictate that that is a severe corrosive environment, and it's going to dictate the type of wiring methods that you use in that area. Okay, so only you know the area, but it's important to understand those words. Look for severe corrosive influences. It's going to dictate the different types of EMT that you can use or what extra level of protection you may have to apply. Okay. And then lastly, for this one, stainless steel EMT shall only be used in the following: stainless steel, non-metallic, or approved accessories. Okay. All right. So there you go. And by the way, if you use anything non-metallic and you happen to be using the EMT or something as an equipment ground, or just in general, there are some applications where you can transition. If you put anything that's non-metallic in the way and that by chance would break your effective ground fault current path, then you're going to need equipment bonding jumpers on that. You know that. I know that. I'm just mentioning it because you see the words non-metallic in here and people freak out. Okay. All right. Just mentioning it. All right. So back to the lesson here. So what is EMT? EMT is the thinnest walled classification of metal non-flexible raceways. Again, it's a tubing. Provides protection from all but severe physical damage. So again, we had a cycle 2020 told us that it was okay for physical damage. Okay. By the way, MC is not rated for physical damage. Schedule 40 PVC is not rated for physical damage. Schedule 80 is, but not 40. AC is not rated for physical protection from physical damage. Non-metallic sheath cable obviously is not rated for physical damage. Okay, so it's important to know all the differences. Okay, so EMT is rated for subject to physical damage, just not severe physical damage. Okay, let's see, 358.10. We read all the uses permitted and not permitted, so we don't need to look at that. What are the sizes that EMT comes in? Trade size half. Okay. What does Thomas says? A lot of stainless EMT is being used in bulk food processing. Yep. Absolutely. Stainless steel, just like when It's easier to sanitize, things like that, so it makes sense. I haven't seen anywhere where it does the code mandate anywhere the use of colored EMT emergency? I don't think so. I think you can color code it if you want. Most of the time with emergencies, they want the labeling done at intervals to say what it is. I think what happens is that many manufacturers do sell the colors, and people are getting used to using the colors for different applications. But I don't believe that anywhere in the NEC dictates the color. But it does in the NEC, for example, emergency, it will dictate the wording or some designation on it to make people know that that's for emergency circuits and things like that. But I don't know that it's color coded. And when it comes to color, and you have fire alarm requirements and fire alarms in 760 that's going to require the words and sizing and the words and the backgrounds, the contrasting backgrounds. But I don't know of anywhere, unless a specification calls for it. Okay. Tom might be on some jobs that require certain colors for certain things, but that's in the specifications. Kind of like the sheathing on non-metallic sheath cable. There's no requirement for that color coding of that sheathing. It's just something we've accepted as an industry. I am not aware it could be, but I'm not aware. I'll go look that up offline and see if I can find anywhere that it says something about color, but I don't believe it is. We can ask TradeHog, see what TradeHog has to say. All right. Anyway, let's get back here. I want to make sure I get these things cleared up before we go. So here is your EMT member. It's a tubing. You've got set screw type couplings. You've got set screw type connectors, dry location application. You got these type for steel. Same thing, set screw type. You also have compression that are designed for use in a wet location as well. And they basically go on each end and they compress down onto the wire method. That's what you want to use in a wet and damp location. You don't want to use set screw type, obviously, in those applications. So it's from a half trade size all the way up to a 6, okay, is what we get in trade size, all right? So there you go. That's a pretty darn big EMT, all right? And now why are people going with a lot of aluminum EMTs when you start getting larger? Because it is lighter. Obviously, steel versus aluminum. So again, if it's indoors somewhere and it's not going to be subject to certain conditions, then that would be fine. Not going to have an issue. Manufacturers make it. Now, cost-wise, I don't know the cost of the aluminum tubing versus the steel, galvanized steel, things like that. I don't know the cost difference. But again, some people say the aluminum is quite expensive. But again, it is lighter. So if you're doing a lot of overhead work, saves the shoulders, I guess. Let's see. The number of conductors permitted in EMT shall not exceed the percentage fill in Table 1, Chapter 9, and that's where you get your 31, your 40, and your 53%, depending on the conductors you're putting in there. Okay, that type of thing. So Yingling emergency system required to be identified. Most of the time, it's going to be identified with the lettering that says emergency, unless people assume that red means that. But then I think you're still going to have to mark it at locations to make it evident, because I can't, you could have people that are so colorblind, so they might not be able to tell it's red or tell it's blue or tell it, you know what I'm saying? So we have to think about that. So the lettering or wording is going to be a better identification, unless they can't read either. And again, I don't know how we tackle that, but somebody could be colorblind. So pushing more towards a coloring scheme on those type of things is more difficult to do that type of scenario. Although people say, well, don't we require orange for a high leg? Yeah, but we give other alternatives. I mean, we get to mark it, we get to label it, we could tag it. We don't have to use orange. If we're going to do colors, we use orange. So again, it can't fix the world, but when it comes to emergency circuit identification, I probably want markings on it to say emergency, that type of thing. Probably me, that type of thing. All right, so that's it for that. Let's go back over to the NEC real quickly. So that's the sizes. So the number of conductors, we just saw that. Again, y'all got to know how to do a raceway fill calculation. I sure hope you do. Okay. And you're going to use Chapter 9, Tables 4 and Table 5 to do that. Okay. You're going to find the fill requirements are going to be in Table 1 of Chapter 9, that type of thing. Bends, how it's made. Bends shall be made so that the tubing is not damaged and the internal diameter of the tubing is not effectively reduced. All right, you've heard me talk about this before. You bend that crap in the field, you use the wrong size bender, you cause it to oblong, then you've effectively reduced the inside diameter. And you say, well, no, it's still the same area, it's just got squished. Okay. Well, that means if you look at the measurement, you're not to change the internal diameter. So if you're measuring across where you did it, you're changing the diameter. So you have to use a bending tool that is not going to damage the interior diameter or reduce it. Okay, that type of thing. Yeah, no dog legs. Okay. All right. So again, important to remember that. Again, the radius, if you're bending it in the field with benders, field benders, the radius of the curve of any field bender center line of the tube shall not be less than shown in Table 2, Chapter 9, and you're using the row that says one shot and full shoe bender. Okay, so that is basically on the bend. Okay, so when you think about the bend of a 90, you're taking the center line. And so from the point where the bend starts and the point where the bend ends on that bend, you have to make sure that your bend is not tighter than what is posted in Chapter 9, Table 2, because if it does, that means it's kinked too tight, and that could damage the actual raceway. So you have to maintain at least that center line radius, and you use that table as your rule that it has to be at least this center line dimension. Can't be tighter than that. And that way you don't run the risk of increasing jam effect, making a harder pull that your pull calculation didn't account for because you were too tighter than that. And it doesn't change the the ID, inner diameter of the actual raceway. And of course, it's not going to change it will change the OD if it squishes, but it also changes the ID, and that's the one we're worried about when we're pulling conductors through it. Okay, that type of scenario. Let's see here. Also, it says runs. Y'all have heard me talk about this before. The total degree of runs in a tubing run shall not exceed 360. Y'all heard me talk about that yesterday for the PVC. So again, rather than reinvent the wheel for those that watched yesterday, but remember, if you're pulling between pull points, whether you intend on using those pull points or not, between pull points, junction box, pull box. If you're dealing, for example, in conductors that are 4 gauge insulated and larger, and you're going to exceed the 360 degrees worth of bends, and that would be adding up your offsets, that'd be adding off any 45s, any 90s, adding up those degrees between these points. If you're going to be more than 360 degrees, a lot of people will specify another pull box to be installed. Well, if you put a pull box there, whether you plan on using it or not, you're transposing it into between the two boxes where the violation was. That pull box has to be sized properly. So if it's a straight pull through it, it's straight as 8, 314.28 has to be applied. If it's angle pulls through that box, then you're going to have to apply 314.28 for the angle pulls 6 times. So 8 times or 6 times. Whether you intend to use the box or not, you can't just put a small box in there to satisfy the code. If you put it in there, could it be used as a pull box? Absolutely, it could be used as a pull box. If that's the case, you have to meet the pull box requirements. That means the sizing rules. Now, a lot of people get away with putting a condylet in there, and as long as the condylet is long enough, the 8 times, the width and the depth only needs to be enough to accommodate the raceway. But the length is still going to be 8 times, even if you use a condylet pulling through, and you may not intend to use it. But if you have to put it in there to satisfy code, then you could put that in there, but you still have to size it properly. Okay? Just want to make sure everybody's on board. Reaming. Obviously, all cut ends of EMTs shall be reamed or otherwise finished to remove any rough edges in and out. Okay, so you ream it out. You got a lot of tools that'll do that. I used to, in the day, would simply take the end of my clines and put it in there and spin it around in there. Okay, and then I would take the outside and just open it up and put it on the outside and run it around just to make sure I didn't have any of those on it. But whatever tool you want to use. People put a screwdriver in there and ream with a screwdriver, whatever you want. The next would be threaded. EMTs shall not be threaded. There is an exception. Right? This is field application. You're not going to be threading EMT in the field. Okay, so exception, EMT with factory threaded integral couplings complying with 358.100 shall be permitted. And of course, 100 is down here talking about the construction requirements. Okay, and it talks about EMT shall be made of the following, yada, yada, yada. Okay, so it's either steel with protective coating, that would be galvanized, aluminum, and stainless steel. Okay. All right. So again, most of the time for all of you in the field, your EMT, you're not going to be threading it. You're going to put a coupling on the end of it. Makes sense, right? Securing and supporting 358.30. Again, that infamous .30. It says EMTs shall be installed as a complete system in accordance with 300.18. Okay, so that's important. So what does that mean? People read that. What does 318 talk about? Real quick. When I'm doing raceways, I see videos of people all the time that are pulling conductors in it, and then they're putting another piece on it and pulling the conductors in it, putting another piece on it, pulling the gun. They're doing it piecemeal. Not how you're supposed to do it. 300.18 makes sure that you complete the run first before you pull the conductors in it. I don't see it as much with EMT because it would be a total pain in the butt. But where I see it all the time is the people that do it with PVC out in pool applications, and they're doing raceways underground in PVC, and they're pulling the full through. They pull the conductors through, then they sleeve it over another because they can't get it pulled through or they don't have the equipment to do it. You're supposed to complete the raceway. That's what 300.18 talks about. Complete the installation, and then you pull the conductors in it. Make sense? That's what you're supposed to do. I'm not saying that's what everybody does. That's what you're supposed to do. Okay? I'm just saying. I can't control what you do, but that's what you're supposed to be doing. Okay? Now it says, and shall be securely fastened in place and supported in accordance with 358.30A and B. Obviously, we're applicable. So your fastening requirements are EMTs shall be securely fastened in place in accordance with the following. Number one, at intervals not exceeding 10 feet. So every 10 feet, you do not worry about your couplings. Okay, so couplings are just a continuation of the raceway. Okay. Next, it says within 3 feet of each outlet box, junction box, device box, cabinet, conduit body, or other tubing termination. So you're coming to the end of your termination. Okay. What this has in common with all of these is that it's ending at that box. It's ending at that location. Okay. So in this scenario, I'll show you. I think we have there's a graphic down here. I'll show you. Right. But let's get here first. Okay. So then at 3 feet of every outlet box, within 3 feet. Now, this has caused quite a bit of debate for people that are educators that really don't sit and think about this. It says within 3 feet. So anywhere in that 3 feet, I could apply this fastener. It could be 6 inches away. It could be 3 feet away. Okay, it's within that 3 feet. Now, some people say, well, it says within 3 feet, so it can't be at 3 feet. Okay, if you want to get into the semantics of within 3 feet, then you're going to do it just shy of 3 feet. Point is, you're going to be putting it somewhere in there within 3 feet down to 0, somewhere in there. So when you see the word within, it means it's within that 3 feet body. So technically, by following the way the code is written, it would be within 3 feet. Okay, so be honest with you, if I put it at 3 feet and I measure it to the box, is it within 3 feet? My answer would be yes. But you're going to have the semantic people out there, right? So they're going to say, okay, why not? Okay. I believe that question is, why doesn't the code say straps or supports need to be listed? I think they are for the 2026 going to be required, have a statement about being listed. But I will say this, as of enforcement right here, I would say EMT, factory elbows, and associated fittings. I would argue that we're already going to require it, even though it's semantics to many people. I would argue that the straps are to be used with EMT, and most of the straps that I see will have markings on it that say EMT. Okay, that type of scenario. Right. Take care, Michael. Glad to have you here. Right. So, but I believe we are changing that. I believe, for clarity in the 2026. Don't hold me to that, because I've refrained from looking at 2026 just because it's not fully approved yet by the Code Council. I look at certain things, but I stay away from a lot of it. But I believe we are. But it's my belief that it is an associated fitting, that type of thing. Now, obviously, if we go back to Article 100, definitions, and we go down and we look at, let's see here. Let's go down real quickly and see if we can get loosely there. Hold on with me. Bear with me. Electronic version is not as easy as just flipping the code book. I'm telling you. All right, so let's go. Let's go down to fitting real quick. And here we're at fitting. Okay. Let's see here. So a fitting is an accessory such as, now that such as doesn't mean that's all inclusive, by the way. Such as just gives us a list. It says an accessory such as a lock nut, bushing, or other part of a wiring system that is intended primarily to perform a mechanical rather than electrical function. I would argue that the strap, and that's why we might see this change in the code, is offering a mechanical to that wiring method rather than an electrical function. It's a mechanical function. And if I lock that under fitting, then that's what's going to give me the ability as an AHJ to say, you know what? I'm going to call that what it is. I'm going to call the associated strap a fitting. Okay. And I think that is, be honest with you, I think that's where the code panel is going with that. It's where I would go with it. Okay. So let's see. Let me get back to where we're at. All right. So that's how I would put the two together, especially if I was an AHJ and I wanted to hang my hat on it. And I don't want to see somebody use a PVC strap on it or something else. I would say, you know what? It's got to be listed. I'm going to say it's a fitting. It's associated. It's mechanical. I'm going to go with that until, the same interpretation that other people will use a little liberty on. I'm going to use the same interpretation that way in order to require that strap for that EMT. And I like that simply because it means that I'm not going to use some other crap for it. I'm going to use something that's designed. And so that's the only way that I can keep it within the parameters. Maybe they'll tighten that up in the 2026. I don't know. I thought there was something talking about it. But if they don't, there you go. Nidia, submit your public input. That's how you can get involved, folks. If you think it should say it a little bit cleaner, I'm going to tell you it works because I did that. I submitted with Boxfill. This is a good example. I submitted that a wire nut or a wire binding device made it clear that it didn't count for volume because, again, it was ambiguous. We all know it didn't. And it says fittings. It says, well, is a wire nut a fitting? You know what I'm saying? So at the end of the day, I felt that it was a need to put it in there. And guess what? It got in there. So it specifically talks about like a wire nut, wire binding devices are not to be counted as volume. So you can do it too. So I encourage you, if we don't fix it in 2026, and we believe that we want those straps to be that type of thing. I don't know if they have a listing. I don't even know if there's a UL standard for straps. I don't even know that type of thing. I am really not even sure. But if there was, they might be working on that. I don't know. I don't get into the weeds. A lot of people think I get into all those different standards. I really don't. I don't have the time. I'm so focused on the NEC that I don't. But that's how I get there for the NEC to require that they use an EMT strap with EMT because I call it an associated fitting. I go look at the fitting. I see that it's mechanical. That's how I get there. That's how I would keep it consistent if you were an AHJ. That's how I'd keep it consistent. Make sense? All right. So you have some exceptions here, and you have fasten unbroken length. So again, you can go more than 3 feet from the box. If you can go up to 5 feet, if it's impractical to be able to do it, like in parking garages where you may have a support that you need, you can't get it at 3 feet. Well, they'll let you, as long as it's an unbroken piece, it'll let go up to 5 feet. Okay. Where the structural members do not readily permit fastening within 3 feet. So you have some allowances to go up to 5 feet, okay? And then exception number 2, it says for concealed work in finished buildings or pre-finished wall panels, maybe you're in a hospital and they're doing pre-finished prefab walls, where such securing is impracticable, you just can't get to it, then it says unbroken links without a coupling of EMT shall be permitted to be fished in there, because it would be impractical to get it in there. So it's basically just like you fishing a piece of non-metallic in there or a piece of NM cable in a wall or whatever this. It just makes it impractical to do it. All right, so here's a great illustration that NFPA has if you're in Link, and I'll show you. Okay, so here you go. So here's a good example. This securement, notice they've got it at 3 feet. So for all of those out there that say, oh no, it's got to be at less than 3 feet within, okay, I think you're just missing the boat. Within 3 feet means 3 feet is fine. It's within that spectrum all the way out to 3 feet. But there's people out there who do other podcasts who want to argue the semantics of code. And I'm like, get on with your life. It's not that big a deal. All right. So here you see it within 3 feet right there. And then it goes to the next 10 feet right here, strap. right here. Okay. Notice that right there. Okay. Notice from this PVC, this right here, this is a 10-foot piece, right? So that is considered connected and secured. There's within 10. That's the no link longer. Okay. Strap here, go up to 10 feet, strap here, go up to 10 feet, strap here. This strap right here is within 3 feet, yada, yada, yada. Okay. All this type of application. We're talking about the securing. And notice that the coupling between supports, notice that the coupling does not break the measurement. Okay. Here, boom. Perfectly fine. Secure it, secure it, secure it. Okay. Now, here's the example of what we're talking about where you couldn't get 3 feet. So here's the box, and you had no structural support within 3 feet that you can connect to on this side. Well, this is the structural support here. It is 4 feet, 10 inches, or it can go up to 5 feet. So again, it can be over 3 if there's nothing there to secure to. So this application, I've had jurisdictions in a parking garage similar to this, or also in a ceiling, that they made them put their own supports down to get it within 3 feet. No, there is an allowance in the code as long as there's no couplings in here. Okay, it's unbroken. Okay, then you can have it go up to 5 feet, that type of thing. So that's what it's talking about. Now, supports. Horizontal runs of EMT supported by openings through framing members at intervals not greater than 10 feet. So that means that I could run it through these intervals, and this could support it. And they are obviously not 10 feet apart. So that would be fine. They'd be considered supported. Okay. Still got to be secured. Okay. Still got to be secured, but they are supported. Okay. If you ran them through this webbing, or if you ran it through a framing member. Okay. Now, you notice it says, and it's securely fastened within 3 feet of the termination point shall be permitted. Now, I don't think they show a video, but they got enhanced here. It says, horizontal runs of EMT are permitted to be supported, but not necessarily secured by framing members at 10-foot intervals, provided the EMT is secured at least 3 feet from the box. Okay. So let's see here. Back up here. Okay. So at the end of the day, there's your supports, right? There's your supports, then 3 feet. Okay. So you see the scheme. So here I could have a support if this was above, and I could run, as long as I have it secured within 10 feet, I can run the entire 10-foot span and get to the next support. Okay. All right. Let's see here. Again, maximum is 10 feet in those examples. Couplings. Couplings and connectors used with EMTs shall be made up tight. Okay. Where buried in masonry or concrete, which should also tell you that EMT can be in masonry and concrete. They shall be concrete tight. Okay. Where installed in wet locations, they shall comply with 314.15. And again, that is talking about these rules here in the location on where you drill your holes, how they're installed, all those type of things. Okay. It just reminds you to follow these rules if you're dealing in a wet location. Okay. You need to make sure that you put your raceway entries into boxes, for example, below live parts. Okay. You don't want to be above live parts and things like that. Okay. Remember the good old days of installing EMT in block walls? Yeah. Back in the day. Yeah. All right, let's see. Splices and taps. Splices and taps shall be made in accordance with 300.15. That means that they're to be done in boxes, not to be done inside of the raceway. Makes sense, right? Next, grounding. EMT shall be permitted as an equipment grounding conductor. So somebody asked me earlier, would I use the EMT as an equipment ground? Absolutely, I would. Right? Okay. Okay, it's a fastener. Okay, Haley, you're smarter than me. I'm sorry. Fastener, strap, connector, securement, whatever. Okay. I'm not the smartest guy in the world. You found that out, Hadley. All right. So grounding and bonding right here. Again, would I use the EMT? Absolutely. Would I prefer to run a wire type? Yes. I prefer to run a wire type in there. Anyway, so when it comes to construction, this is pretty much taken up by the manufacturer. Okay, so you really don't have to worry too much about this unless you're getting some kind of weird Chinese import. Okay, EMT shall be made of steel with protective coating. That's the galvanized, the aluminum, or even stainless steel. the markings. It says EMTs shall be clearly and durably marked at every 10 feet, okay, as required in the first sentence of 110.21a. Okay, 110.21a is equipment marking requirements. Okay, affixed. Most of the EMTs either going to have a label on it. Okay, so that type of thing. So there you go. All right, that's it. Let's do some giveaways real quick so I can get you folks out of here. Yeah, if you go look it up, I think what Hadley's saying is probably the straps, you're probably looking them up as fasteners, that type of thing. And so fasteners may have a listing, but that's how I get there. And if my explaining how I got there and didn't treat it as an associated fitting, then I'm sorry. It is what it is. Mike Holt has a great channel. Folks can go watch that. Ryan Jackson does too. There's a lot of other great educators you can go watch. You don't have to watch me. All right, so let's do a drawing really quickly. Why would it be listed? Because some AHJs take it extremely serious. And somebody says, well, why can't I secure? Yeah. You need to read your chat. You know what? You need to be blocked. Let me write you down, Hadley, so I can make sure I block you from the channel. Let's see here. Scott McIntyre. I'll get you. I'll get you in a minute. No worries. All right. Let's see here. Okay. So what we got? Adam. The moment when you tell me how to do my show is a moment that you can piss off. Okay. All right. So Adam, you got, you already have Fast Tracks Tube, don't you, Adam? So let's spin you again. Why would I want fasteners listed? Because I don't want somebody to take my EMT and drive a nail into the wood and then wrap the nail over my EMT. So why would I, I'd like it to be identified for the use. So maybe that's more appropriate to call something it's identified. So code says listed, labeled, and identified. So maybe we don't need a listing. But for me to get there and make sure that that as an AHJ, for me to make sure that somebody uses a fastener, a strap, a clip, whatever you want to call it, I'm sure this guy would say the same thing about sub panels. He's like, don't call it sub panels. It's a remote distribution, whatever. So for me, we're realists here on the show. So for me to get there, I got to go to something. So I want to make sure that they use the right strap, right fastener, right clip, whatever you want to call it, for that type of wiring method. So I get there by having something either identified or say, you know what, let's get it listed. Now, what you can tell is if they mark it and they don't have any of those marks from UL, or go to the box that the straps come in and look and see if there's anything marked on the box itself. They may not have a listing for the fasteners. I don't know. That's not my area of business. I don't go looking for that type of stuff. But how I want to make sure that they use the right securing method that goes with that type of wiring method. And we explained yesterday with PVC, because of the expansion and contraction, it's important to make sure that we use something that's going to expand and contract equally with the wiring method, or we install it properly. So they may not have a listing for fasteners, that type of thing. Should they? Probably should. They probably should have some that design their products to go specifically with that wiring method. Then we'd have less problems, that type of thing. But I'm certainly going to require something to be identified. I am not going to let somebody use a PVC strap with EMT. I'm not. That's just me. You do you, boo. That type of thing. So Adam, you're in drawing for the ultimate coin. Congratulations, Adam. You're in that drawing. Let's spin. Is that ANT? You're in the drawing for the coasters. And the coasters, if you haven't seen them, Stephen, they look like this. Of course, you can get the one with journeyman or master on it, electrician if you want. Doesn't matter. If you win that on the drawing. Spin again. Battles Electric. You're in the drawing for Trade Hog. Congratulations. Hopefully you'll get that. All right, folks. That is it for today. Hopefully you got something out of it. Look for a video coming this week or next week when we talk about taking a bonded generator, making it unbonded per the manufacturer's instructions. It's a Westinghouse generator, by the way. So check that out. It'll be out. I don't know what platform. Probably going to be over on Fast Track's Tube, but again, maybe a little snippet of it will be on social media. Who knows? All right, folks. Till next time, stay safe. God bless. Catch you on another episode of Coffee Hour. And by the way, Hadley, if you didn't learn anything today, piss off. There's other channels you can watch. Peace.